In today's video, I'm going to shed light on one of the secrets of how I approach pretty much every aspect of my painting. In life, it's pretty rare that we get an opportunity for something to be both quick and easy, and as painters, we're often forced to choose between those two things. Highlighting in particular can be a bother in this way. For example, glazing is so easy to get perfect, it really doesn't take a lot of skill, but it takes a very, very long time, and that can be really frustrating. Conversely, wet blending is super fast and gets a really, really nice blended result, but it's very hard to do accurately, and a lot of people find that very, very difficult. As a busy commission painter and someone that's often trying to squeeze their own minis in around those commissions, I've had to work hard to develop a style that both maximizes how fast I can be so that my customers are getting value for money when I'm charging by the hour, but is as good a quality as I can get it in that time so that I can be proud of my miniatures. One of the particular things that I've focused on developing in that is a highlighting method that kind of works pretty universally, something that I can use to approach most surfaces, and gives me that nice balance of being pretty fast to execute whilst still giving a good enough quality result that I'm happy to call it commission level painting. I suppose if I had to put a name to the technique that I've developed, I'd probably call it something like triad blending, or the problem is that it doesn't necessarily use specific physical methods, it's more of a thought process. So I want to try and take you over some of that today and help give a little bit of insight into what I think is the best happy medium between speed and quality when it comes to highlighting our miniatures. Okay, first of all, let's take a look at my palette here as a good starting point. You can see that I've got some Macragge Blue as a base tone here, and I've got some Calidor Sky as a highlight. So these are the two colours I'm currently wanting to work between. I'm going to mix sort of a 50-50 mixture of those in the middle, and for the purposes of the rest of this video, we'll refer to that as our blend tone. Okay, so the mini, quite predictably, is going to be an ultramarine, but don't be alarmed. I'm specifically choosing a space marine to demonstrate this on because they show a lot of the different regular volumes that we paint. They're full of cylinders, spheres, and triangles, which are the main shapes that we need to highlight when we're painting most miniatures. The other reason to make this choice is that I personally find blue one of the trickier colours to paint. That's not going to be true for everybody, but if I'm demonstrating something that's personal to me, I think it makes sense to demonstrate how it's helped me overcome a barrier. So blue being a colour that I find quite tough to do, it seemed to make a lot of sense to use for this example. Right, enough chat, let's get some painting done. So first of all, you can already see that I've blocked in this entire miniature with Macragge Blue. This was actually sprayed, and that's why it's kind of handy to have a spray that matches your base colour sometimes. And what I'm going to do here is just block in a really rough highlight just in the position that I want the highlight to live using that Calidor Sky. We're going to start here on a cylinder just because I think that's one of the easiest shapes to highlight properly, so the back of the leg here. Okay, now for this step I need to work fast, so what I'm going to do is grab my blend tone, that mix of the base and the highlight, and I'm going to bracket this highlight that I've laid down on the leg with some of that blend tone. However, as I lay each line down, what I'm going to do is very quickly clean my brush, and then use that clean brush just to feather the transition between the two colours. And that's going to create sort of a bit of a crude blend to start off with. You can see that even after just the first pass of this, it's actually kind of blended already. However, let's just take a quick look now at what this would look like if I'd repeated the process a few times. Actually, this was only 2 repeats of the process, so I just did the whole thing to just build up enough solidarity of colour to be able to give a nice clean transition. So the logical next question is obviously going to be, well, what about the contrast? This is obviously quite low in contrast. But there's nothing stopping us just, once we've got that highlight established, repeating the exact same process but stepping all of the brightness up a little bit. So if we now treat Calidor Sky as the base tone, where previously it was the highlight tone, we can move to, say, Vallejo Electric Blue, in my example, as a highlight tone, and then just create a new blend tone in between those. And then we just repeat the process on a smaller scale. So all we've got to do to achieve that is repeat the exact same process that we've just been through, using our new triad of colours, but just within the highlight that we already created. So whereas the space that we had to work with before was the entire back of the leg, the space that we have to work with now is just that blue stripe of Calidor Sky that we first created. As long as we stick within that, but do exactly the same thing, the result will appear for us. And again, you know, a couple of repetitions just to get that colour looking nice and solid, to make sure that all the coverage is there and that the transitions are smooth. And we get something that now has contrast. And of course, beyond this, there's nothing stopping us from pushing the contrast further at the top end, just with some bright highlights here and there. Some little T-spots in a sort of mixture of white and electric blue, or some little spots of pure white. And indeed, there's absolutely nothing stopping us from pushing those shadows a bit more as well. So in this case, I just grabbed some red and some black, mixed a dark colour, popped a little bit of blue in it just to tone it off, and then just glazed it into the shadows to make some more pop. Also, I absolutely did promise that this technique works for all of the common volumes. So here's an example of that technique now repeated across a few different shapes, so you can see the difference between how it interacts with cylinders, with spheres, and with some triangles. And then with the help of our good friend Lieutenant Calcius, who you may recognise from a previous video where we didn't actually mention his armour at all, we were concentrating on the gold, but we can now see what kind of thing you can do with this in a pretty short amount of time. This Lieutenant Calcius was actually painted for my own army, and I think I probably spent about 4 hours on him, maybe completely start to finish, possibly even a little bit less than that. So yes, whilst I did some other things on top of this technique, you can see that there's a bit of forced texture there, and there's a few sort of little different extra bits added to the miniature. But the basis of the armour, at least, is very much this exact same technique, and you can see that it does get some really nice results without a ton of time having to be invested. So that's it. It's a really simple and no-nonsense approach to highlighting your miniatures. Obviously, it's not going to work for the really highly textured surfaces like fur and things like that, but that's not the majority of our painting. The majority of our painting is just basic simple volumes, and so we can use this technique just as a kind of catch-all method to be able to approach most miniature painting and have an idea of what to do to get something that looks pretty nice and doesn't take too long. And in my book, I think that's a really handy tool to have in your arsenal, not just as a commission painter, but also as someone who's actually trying to get through painting some armies here and there, which is a thing that I've definitely struggled with over the years. So what did you think, folks? Did you like this idea? Is it an interesting method to you? Do you perhaps have some suggestions for how I could optimize it even further? How I could remove some wasted effort in order to get a bit more speed out of it, but still keep that good quality result? I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you have any ideas, so do feel free to get at me. Of course, don't forget that you can click that thumbs up button to like this video if you indeed liked it, and you can subscribe and enable notifications to stay up to date on when I'm releasing new videos here on YouTube. If you really love the content and you want to support both me and its creation, you can pledge on Patreon from as little as $1 a month. I'll leave a link to that in the description, along with links to all of my social media if you want to catch me on there. So with all that said and done, it's probably about high time I got out of here now, so I'm going to roll those end credits and thank all of my existing patrons, but also thank you for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye for now.